Those who work in insurance claims, what's your best "you've got to be kidding me" story? Story 1. Back in the day, I was a claims clerk/coordinator for a big truck company. You know that number you see on the back of big trucks? Call 800 blah 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 blah. That went to my small department. We compiled those into accident claims, work comp reports, and other things. This one night, I get a call from a trucker who said he wanted to make a work comp report. Okay, sure. Routine thing. Glad to try to help out someone who may be hurt and needs it. First question. Are you okay? Do you need me to get you to a hospital? Nah, nothing like that. Okay, so what's your injury? Where and how did it happen? It was in my truck. I got it from a lot lizard. Truck stop prostitute. This poor guy was trying to make it a work comp claim so he could go to the doctor for his STD after his dispatcher gave him heck about wanting to go to the doctor. Truck drivers are quite reliable for "you've got to be kidding me" moments. There was a truck completely wrecked, thankfully no injuries, due to a bee in the cab. There was a driver who called after a pedestrian literally walked himself under the tires to commit seppuku. There was one driver who hit a bridge and said, "I didn't think they were serious" about the posted height of the bridge. There was a huge 100-plus vehicle crash due to fog a few miles from one of our terminals, where we had at least 7 of our trucks in one wreck. There was a driver who was on a high-security, multi-million-dollar load who just casually left his truck unlocked while he went in for a pee, etc., etc. That said, probably 3 out of 4 of all accidents were caused by the smaller vehicle if there were multiple vehicles involved. Story 2. I've worked in claims-related areas for about 10 years. I've done claim processing on a wide range of policies, from domestic home and contents through to motor fleet, commercial liability, wheat crop, livestock, fidelity, etc. I'm now a loss adjuster, insurance assessor, and boy have I seen some things. Probably the strangest one I ever saw was a burglary claim. The homeowners had rented their 500-acre property out to tenants, and included in the lease was a shed full of equipment: tractors, harvesters, work tools, etc. Basically everything you need to run a farm was in that shed. At the end of the lease, they took back over the farm and found the shed not only empty, but missing. The concrete slab was still there, but nothing else was. A claim was lodged, a police report was made, and the customer got everything replaced. However, where it gets strange is the phone call I got 8 months later. The customer went to turn on their tap one day, and no water came out. They went outside, and their pump was working, but was sucking nothing up, meaning there was a blockage somewhere. The customer went through all the motions, the final step being get in the dam with scuba gear. The dam was something 4,900,000 liters, so a fairly big dam, and see what's blocking the pipe, and found that the tenant had disassembled the shed and put all of it, including the contents of the shed, into the dam. We then helped the customer empty the dam and move everything to auction to be sold off. The profit went back to the insurer to pay for claims costs. Story 3. Usually the "you've got to be kidding me" claims are ones where I wonder how someone thought they would never get caught filing a fraudulent claim. A favorite of mine is a guy who took his giant customized truck mudding while drinking, and against the advice of everyone he was with, drove it into a creek well, I'm not really sure why. His truck got stuck. The water levels rose, and he decided to just report the truck stolen. He didn't think about the fact that there were tons of witnesses and that he posted it on his Facebook. Another personal favorite was a man with supposedly $120,000 worth of gems and diamonds on his old Bentley, with no proof of them ever being there, besides a music video on YouTube that he swore was of his car. Most of the others are run-of-the-mill fraud, starting a policy and filing a claim immediately for damages that occurred before it was in force, sometimes already having received a payout from another company. Also, people with handwritten receipts for huge sums of money don't think we believe you, and don't have your lawyer send me a poorly written email from a fake law office from a Gmail account. I had a guy who was repped by an attorney with an AOL email address. I was like, call me when you're serious. Story 4. I was in the Air Force, and a friend/coworker had the registration expire on his car. Driving a car on base without proper tags usually results in paperwork and a stern talking to by supervision. Not a good situation. So until he could afford to pay for it, he would drive to my house and park his car, and I would give him a lift into work. For some reason, one day he parked right where my car usually turns into as I back out. This was beside my driveway, not out in the road. I didn't notice. I ended up backing into his car while he was in the passenger seat. Crunch! He had his mouth open while it was happening, but all that came out was an incoherent sputtering. We also had the same insurance company. Insurance person. So let me get this straight. You were a passenger in the vehicle that hit your parked vehicle? Are you aware that insurance fraud is a crime? Are you sure this is the story you want to go with? Fun times. Story 5. One of my favorites, an insured hit a telephone pole, and when the police arrived, he was arrested for a DUI. According to him, that was BS charge because he hadn't been drinking before the accident. You see, after the accident, a good Samaritan stopped to see if he was okay. The insured told this stranger that he was okay, but he was thirsty. All the stranger had was some beers, so he gave them to the insured and left. That's why he had alcohol in his system when the cops showed up. I had a buddy that kept a six-pack in his trunk. The express purpose was to start chugging this when cops showed up if he ever got into a drunk driving accident. It was his belief they couldn't prove he was drunk before the accident or after downing a six-pack in front of them, so the DUI wouldn't stick. Not claims, but here's one I remember from working the front desk at a local agency. This one lady had over 50 towing and labor claims within a 6-month period. She would drive until she ran out of gas and then call the tow number. They would come out and give her a few gallons of gas. Then she would drive until she ran out of gas and call the number again. Rinse and repeat. After 6 months, they permanently banned her from using that option. She also used to have her bill done as an automatic withdrawal. It would save her $5 on her bills if it was automatically taken out, but she would never have the money in her account, which would cause her bank to hit her with a $35 non-sufficient funds fee. Then she would call us and raise heck, trying to get us to pay the fee. I hated that woman and dreaded having to deal with her. Story 7. I work in homeowners claims. Here are a few I've got right now. Number 1, the lightning caused my refrigerator to go out and I lost $4,500 worth of penicillin and 287 pounds of steaks. My doctor retired and the pharmacy went out of business and I don't keep receipts. Oh, and I threw out the steaks. I suppose I'd settle for $2,500. Number 2, the wind blew my $1,000 iron patio set completely out of the yard. We never found it. You want me to go looking for it? I only have one arm. Number 3, yeah, my garbage disposal stopped working. I don't know what's wrong with it. Number 4, I picked up a lady friend from the thrift store. When we got back, she drugged me and robbed my apartment. Oh, and she found all my receipts and took them too. These are just a few off the top of my head. I've been doing this for years, though. I've got tons. Story 8. Claims adjuster here. We once had a claim for a home robbery. This couple was on vacation, and their 45-year-old son was house-sitting. He had a heart attack on the couch in the living room, and while he was dead, someone broke in and robbed the place completely clean. He was dead for 2 weeks before the parents came home and found his decomposing body, and that their entire house had been gutted. Super sad. On a funnier note, though, we had a house fire claim, so the insured gave us a spreadsheet with everything they were claiming and replacement prices. This couple had thousands of dollars in intimate toys, and they even put on Playboys and Penthouse magazines that were 10 years old and worthless with the depreciation. I mean, I get why you'd want to claim that since it's good money, but dang, was it hard to look them in the eye knowing how kinky they were. Story 9. I was making a claim a couple of years ago when I found my car one morning with a huge dent on the bonnet. It cracked the servo fluid reservoir underneath, so storing didn't work either. It was parked next to a 10-story building, and it looked like someone dropped something on it. Called the cops. They questioned everyone. Turns out a resident's fat cat jumped off from the window of floor 9 and landed on my car. The poor fella broke a leg, but survived and ran off. Now, when I made a claim at the car owner's insurance company, I had to talk to dozens of people because they wouldn't believe what happened. It didn't really help either that the police report had a sketch of the incident on it, a drawing of a falling cat. Sounds like someone in the force was having a slow day. Story 10. Currently work in home claims lodgment. My favorite has got to be a call I received a few months ago. Around a decade ago, this lady took her ring into a jeweler's. One of the claws holding the stone was bent out, and she wanted to get it repaired. Since the job was small, the jeweler kept the ring overnight, performed the repair, and didn't charge the woman for the job when she came back to pick it up. Now back to the present day, lady takes her ring in to a different place to get it valued. Turns out the stone is cubic zirconia. The original jeweler swapped it out overnight, didn't charge her so there'd be no paper trail, and had since closed shop. Of course, I always wondered whether the ring was ever a diamond. Story 11. Using a throwaway in case our claimant is on the internet. Retail. We had a claim for injury for someone that was injured by our sink fixture magically ripping itself out of the wall and falling on our claimant, causing serious injury. An index search revealed similar claims at several other companies spread out over the past few years. Turns out our claimant seems to have very bad luck with the restroom fixtures falling apart and injuring her. Another company who dealt with this claimant in the past was cooperative in sharing their investigation. Turns out our claimant has a tendency to not be alone in the restroom. Needless to say, it had been determined that the claimant has a pattern of going into public restrooms to have fun times. Story 12. My dad's a construction litigation lawyer, but close enough for this. There was a couple that had a ton of damage done to their house by a sinkhole, but they were claiming a ton of luxury items, such as jewelry, fur coats, etc., that were all lost. And here's the best part, they always paid for these items in cash, and they always bought duplicates. Didn't take the forensic accountant very long to figure that one out. A woman claimed that her windows were defective because they were leaking. It was condensation. A guy got a splinter walking over some boards that were covering a worksite, called an ambulance for himself, ended up getting like $400 from the contractor, but it didn't cover his costs. Story 13. I was the one giving the unbelievable story. Was driving some mates back from a concert and went over a drain in the road, and the front right suspension of my car collapsed. Ah, frick. Was kinda drivable, so I limped it back home. Remembered I had comprehensive, so called up my insurer, and they assumed I was drunk and spent the good part of 2 months trying to get me to either admit it, prove I wasn't, or drop the claim. End result was they paid out. Very frustrating. Even if you were drunk, they'd still have to pay it. Sure, they'd add a note to your file to make your rates fly through the roof, but they'd definitely have to pay it. Story 14. Not necessarily a weird claim, but I work in centralized services for an insurance company, and we have a guy who we call the breather. He calls around, waits until a lady picks up, and proceeds to get his jollies off on the phone. He then calls for about an hour. Of course, we all disconnect on him. We were finally able to get his number because of an updated VoIP system, and turns out he's some fancy lawyer. Real creeper. Story 15. I don't work insurance claims, but work IT for an insurance company, and overheard someone talking about a time when they worked in the call center, and their coworker was on the line, and the call went, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am, the train always has the right of way." But the right-hand rule. Story 16. A 16-year-old kid got some crap-tastic Mustang, which needed a paint job. He got a quote and realized, hey, it's kind of expensive. Ever so conveniently, his car was keyed. They managed to damage every single panel while it was parked in a McDonald's parking lot during the supper rush. Story 17. I have worked in car insurance claims for a good few years now. The funniest was a colleague took a call where the customer walked out of his front door to find a bull sleeping with his car. The customer advised that he let the bull finish. Story 18. Worked in claims for a spell. Some dude was taking bong hits on the other end. I let him finish, but I laughed a lot. He actually was filing a claim because he ran into his mailbox after brunch. Story 19. Medical life insurance. My coworker was offering orientations. An old lady stood up from the crowd and dropped dead. If she would have just waited an hour, maybe she would have signed up. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.